The sky above Arcturus Prime turned dark. Not with clouds, but with ships. Valkyrie ships. They hung in orbit like giant insects, their bioorganic hulls pulsing with sick green light. On the bridge of the largest vessel, High Commander Vraxis watched the human colony below through his viewing screen. His multiple eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Deploy the Shriekers," he commanded. The cargo bays opened. Thousands of dark shapes fell toward the planet like rain. Each creature was 8 feet tall, covered in black chitinous armor with too many limbs and eyes that glowed red. They were called Shriekers because of the terrible sound they made when they hunted. The Valkyrie had designed them to be nightmares made flesh. Every species that saw them broke. Every civilization that faced them surrendered. The humans would be no different. Or so Vraxis thought. On the ground in the military command center of New Sol, Colonel Doyen stared at the radar screen. Red dots filled the display, thousands of them descending fast. An alarm blared through the base. Soldiers rushed to their stations. Some of them looked scared. Most looked angry. "Sir, we have multiple hostile contacts," Lieutenant Myre reported. She pulled up video feeds from the outer settlements. The images showed dark creatures moving through streets, their movements fast and predatory. "They appear to be bioweapons, some kind of engineered predator." Doyen studied the footage. He had seen many things in his 42 years. He had fought in the border wars. He had lost his entire squad to a Valkyrie ambush 3 years ago. He did not scare easily. "Analysis?" Mireille typed rapidly on her console. "Pack hunters. Ambush tactics. They use fear as a weapon. Look at their design. Everything about them triggers primal responses. The multiple limbs, the glowing eyes, the sounds they make. They want us to panic. Will we?" Doyen asked. Mireille looked up at him. "No, sir. We have dealt with worse." Doyen nodded. "Get me Captain Heejin, and deploy all hunter-killer teams. Treat them like any other predator. Study, counter, eliminate." Across the base, Sergeant Jiwon loaded her heavy rifle with armor-piercing rounds. Private Tai Young, the young medic, stood beside her, checking his medical supplies with shaking hands. It was his first real combat deployment. "Scared, kid?" Jiwon asked. She was 35 and had seen enough combat to fill 3 lifetimes. "A little," Taeyang admitted. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp. But don't let it control you." She slapped a fresh magazine into her weapon. "These things are just animals. Big, ugly animals. We kill animals all the time." On the Valkyrie flagship, bioarchitect Thessara monitored the Shrieker deployment. She had created these weapons, splicing DNA from the deadliest predators across a dozen worlds. They were her masterpiece. She watched the data streams, waiting for the expected panic signals from the human population. But something was wrong. The humans were not panicking. They were organizing. Military units moved with precision, evacuating civilians, establishing defensive positions. It was like watching an ant colony respond to danger. Efficient, coordinated, calm. "This does not match our projections," she said to Vraxis. "They are in shock." Vraxis replied confidently. "The collapse will come soon." But Thessara was not so sure. She had studied human history. These creatures had evolved on a death world, a planet full of predators and disasters. They had survived ice ages and plagues. They had hunted animals larger and more dangerous than themselves. Perhaps the Shriekers were not as terrifying to them as she had hoped. In the ruins of Settlement 7, Lieutenant Mireille led her squad through the empty streets. Smoke rose from burning buildings. The Shriekers had been here. Bodies lay in the streets, some human, some alien. Mireille knelt beside a dead Shrieker, examining it with clinical interest. "Look at this," she said to her team. "The armor plates do not cover the joints. See here, vulnerable points. And the neural cluster is exposed at the base of the skull. One good shot there and it is down." Sergeant Jiwon grunted. "Looks like a spider had a baby with a tiger." "Ugly little bastard." "Movement," one of the soldiers whispered. They heard it before they saw it. A shriek that made their teeth hurt and their skin crawl. The sound was designed to trigger fear. It worked on a biological level, bypassing rational thought. But these were trained soldiers. They felt the fear, acknowledged it, and kept moving. 3 Shriekers emerged from a collapsed building. They moved fast, scuttling on their multiple limbs, their red eyes fixed on the humans. One of them opened its mouth and screamed again. The sound echoed through the empty streets. Mireille raised her rifle. Overlapping fields of fire. "Target the joints." "Fire on my mark," the Shriekers charged. They were fast, impossibly fast. But the humans were ready. Mireille fired first. her bullet punching through the lead creature's knee joint. It stumbled. Jiwan's heavy round took it in the neural cluster. The shrieker collapsed, twitching. The other two split up, trying to flank. Standard pack tactics. The humans had trained for this. They moved as one unit, covering each other, denying the creatures their advantage. Another burst of gunfire. Another shrieker down. The last one tried to retreat, too late. Jiwan tracked it with thermal imaging and put 3 rounds through its back. It crashed to the ground and did not move again. First blood, Jiwan said, checking her weapon. Not so scary when they are dead. Private Taiyang moved to check for human survivors in the buildings. He found a family hiding in a basement, a mother and 2 children. They were terrified but alive. He helped them to safety, his hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Are the monsters gone? The little girl asked. Taiyang looked back at the dead shriekers. Yes, the monsters are gone. Back at command, Captain Hiejin reviewed the combat reports. The first engagements were complete. Human casualties were minimal. Shrieker casualties were mounting. She pulled up biological analysis from the dead specimens. These things were designed to break us psychologically, she said to Colonel Doyen. But they made a mistake. They assumed we would react like prey. And we are not prey, Doyen finished. No, sir, we never have been. Hiejin pulled up a tactical map. They sent predators after us. But humans are the ultimate predators. We hunted mammoths with spears. We crossed oceans in wooden boats. We split the atom. We conquered our own world before we even left it. Doyen smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Then let us show them what real predators look like. Prepare a counteroffensive. We are going hunting. On the Velkari flagship, Vraxis stared at his screens in disbelief. The reports made no sense. The shriekers were dying. Not in small numbers, but in hundreds. The humans were hunting them. Actually hunting them. This is impossible, he muttered. Scout Commander Cavalrus stood beside him. He had been watching the human response more carefully than the others. He had a bad feeling about this. Sir, perhaps we should reconsider our approach. These humans are not reacting as expected. Nonsense, Vraxis snapped. They are primitives. They will break. All species break eventually. But deep down, Cavalrus knew the truth. The humans were not breaking. If anything, they were getting stronger. And that terrified him more than anything the Velkari had ever encountered, because the humans did not see the shriekers as demons. They saw them as targets. The laboratory smelled like death and chemicals. Lieutenant Mireille stood over the dissection table, her hands covered in alien blood. 3 dead shriekers lay before her, their bodies opened up for study. Around her, xenobiologists worked with quiet efficiency, taking samples and recording data. Fascinating, Mireille said, probing a neural cluster with a metal tool. Their design is actually quite sophisticated. But they have weaknesses. Look here. The chitinous plates do not cover the secondary joints, and their thermal regulation is poor. They overheat in sustained combat. A young scientist leaned closer. What about the fear response? Our soldiers report feeling terror when they hear the shrieks. It is a biological response. The frequency triggers our amygdala, but it can be overcome with training and discipline. Mireille straightened up. These creatures were designed to fight prey species that had never known predation. But humans? We have been prey and predator both. We understand fear. We do not let it control us. She pulled up a holographic display showing shrieker pheromone trails. The creatures used chemical signals to communicate and coordinate their hunts. It was an effective system. It was also predictable. We can synthesize these pheromones, she said. Use them to lure the shriekers into traps. Turn their own biology against them. Colonel Doyen entered the lab. He looked tired but focused. 3 days of constant combat had taken its toll, but he would not rest until the threat was eliminated. What have you learned? He asked. Mireille handed him a datapad. Everything we need to kill them efficiently. Weak points, behavioral patterns, communication methods. They are impressive predators, sir, but they are not invincible. With the right tactics, we can turn this around. Doyen scanned the information. A plan formed in his mind. Good work, Lieutenant. Send this to all combat units immediately. And prepare a strike team. We are going hunting tonight. On the Velkari flagship, High Commander Vraxis reviewed the casualty reports with growing frustration. 500 shriekers lost in 3 days. The numbers should have been reversed. The humans should be losing thousands. Instead, they were adapting, learning, fighting back with disturbing effectiveness. They are studying the bodies, Thessara reported. Her voice was hollow. They are dissecting our shriekers, learning their weaknesses, developing countermeasures. That is impossible, Vraxis said. No species has ever responded this way. The shriekers inspire terror. They break morale. They shatter civilizations. The humans are different, Scout Commander Cavalrus said quietly. He had been watching the human tactics closely. They treat the shriekers like any other threat. They analyze. They adapt. They overcome. This is what they do. Then we deploy more shriekers, Vraxis decided. Overwhelm them with numbers. No species can withstand a full swarm. Cavalrus said nothing. He had a terrible feeling that more shriekers would not help. The humans were learning too fast. Every encounter made them better at killing the creatures. More shriekers just meant more dead shriekers. That night in the ruins of District 12, Sergeant Jiwan set up her heavy weapon on a rooftop. Private Taiyang crouched beside her, watching through thermal imaging. Below them, the streets were dark and empty. Burning vehicles cast flickering shadows on the walls. Bait is in position, Colonel Doyen reported over the radio. He stood in the street below, along with Lieutenant Mireille and 2 other soldiers. They had released the synthesized pheromones. Now they waited. This is either brilliant or insane, Mireille said quietly. Sometimes the same thing, Doyen replied. They heard the shrieking before they saw the creatures. The sound came from all directions, echoing off the buildings. Then the shriekers appeared, moving fast through the shadows. 10 of them, 20 more. They were drawn to the pheromones like moths to flame. Now, Doyen said calmly. Jiwan opened fire. The heavy weapon roared, spitting armor-piercing rounds into the shrieker pack. Taeyang marked targets with laser designation. Hidden soldiers in other buildings joined the ambush. Crossfire from 3 directions. The shriekers tried to scatter, but there was nowhere to go. Mireille threw thermal charges into their midst. The explosives were designed to exploit the shriekers' poor heat regulation. The creatures shrieked in pain and confusion as their bodies overheated. They tried to retreat, but more fire cut them down. In less than 3 minutes, it was over. 27 shriekers lay dead in the street. Not a single human casualty. Clean sweep, Jiwan reported. She sounded satisfied. Come on, you ugly bastards. Is that all you got? Private Taiyang climbed down from the rooftop. He walked among the dead shriekers, checking to make sure they were really dead. One of them twitched. He shot it twice more. His hands no longer shook. 3 days of combat had changed him. He was harder now. Colder. They are afraid, he said suddenly. Mireille looked at him. What? The shriekers. They tried to run. They are starting to fear us. Taeyang looked up at the night sky, where the Velkari ships still hung in orbit. We are becoming their nightmare. Over the next week, the pattern repeated across Arcturus Prime. The humans set traps. The shriekers died. Human forces began leaving the bodies on display, arranged in ways that triggered fear responses in the creatures. It was psychological warfare, and it was working. The shriekers, designed to be fearless killers, started showing signs of stress. They avoided certain areas. They retreated when confronted. Their pack coordination deteriorated. The hunters were becoming the hunted. Captain Hyojin watched all of this from her command center. She collected data on every engagement, every tactic, every weakness. She was building a complete profile of the Velkari and their weapons. Knowledge was power, and she was gathering as much as possible. The shriekers are withdrawing to the northern territories, she told Doyun. They are concentrating their forces. Defensive posture. This is not the behavior of an overwhelming weapon. This is the behavior of a losing force. The Velkari will escalate, Doyun predicted. They cannot accept defeat. Not from us. They will send more. Then we will be ready. On the flagship, Vraxis made his decision. If the current deployment was insufficient, he would send 10 times as many shriekers. He would drown the humans in monsters. They could not possibly kill them all. Deploy all remaining shriekers, he ordered. Every breeding facility. Every transport. Send them all. Thessara looked horrified. Commander, that is over 50,000 specimens. If we lose them all, the program is finished. We will not lose them, Vraxis said coldly. The humans cannot possibly handle this many. Their resistance will crumble. This ends now. But Cavalrus, standing in the corner, knew better. The humans had killed hundreds of shriekers with minimal casualties. What would stop them from killing thousands, or tens of thousands? The Velkari were not escalating to victory. They were escalating to massacre, and the worst part? The humans would welcome it. More targets meant more opportunities to perfect their hunting techniques. The Velkari were not overwhelming the humans. They were training them. Cavalrus looked at the deployment orders on his screen and felt something he had never experienced before. True fear. Not for himself, but for his entire species. Because he finally understood what the humans were. They were not prey. They were apex predators, and the Velkari had just made themselves the prey. They came like a black wave. 50,000 shriekers dropped from the Velkari ships, darkening the sky. The alarms across Arcturus Prime screamed without stopping. This time the Velkari were not playing games. They were drowning humanity in monsters. The outer settlements fell within hours. There were simply too many creatures moving too fast. Families that had survived the first deployment were not so lucky this time. The shriekers swept through villages and towns like locusts, leaving only death behind. Private Taiyang worked in the medical bay without rest. Wounded soldiers came in faster than he could treat them. Burns, lacerations, missing limbs. The cost of war written in blood on metal tables. His uniform was soaked red. His eyes were hollow from lack of sleep. "We need more supplies," he shouted to a nurse. "More everything. We cannot keep up." A soldier died on the table in front of him. Just stopped breathing. Taeyang tried to revive him, but it was too late. Another life lost. Another name for the memorial wall. In the command center, Colonel Doyen studied the tactical map. Red zones covered half the planet now. The shriekers were everywhere. For the first time since the invasion began, he felt the weight of possible defeat. "We need to pull back," one of his officers said. "Consolidate our forces. We cannot hold the outer territories," Doyen nodded slowly. "Begin strategic withdrawal. Pull everyone back to the core cities. Fortify our positions," he paused. "And send a message to Captain Heejin. Tell her we are implementing Protocol Scorched Earth." The officer went pale. Protocol Scorched Earth was a last resort. It meant sacrificing territory to kill the enemy. It meant turning cities into traps. It meant accepting massive infrastructure loss for strategic gain. "Sir, are you certain?" "Do it," Doyen said. His voice was cold as ice. "The Velkari want to escalate? We will show them escalation." On the Velkari flagship, High Commander Vraxis watched with satisfaction. The humans were finally breaking. They were retreating. The shriekers were winning. Everything was going according to plan. "They are abandoning New Sol," Thessara reported. "The city is emptying. They are running." "Excellent," Vraxis said. "Send the shriekers into the city. Claim it as our forward base. This is the beginning of their end." But Cavalrus felt uneasy. Something about the retreat was too organized. Too deliberate. The humans were not panicking. They were following a plan, and that worried him more than anything. Captain Hyegen stood on a hill overlooking New Sol. The city was empty now. Every civilian evacuated, every soldier withdrawn. It looked like a ghost town, silent and waiting. But it was not empty. Not really. It was full of surprises. Lieutenant Mireille stood beside her, holding a remote detonator. Sergeant Jiwan was there too, watching through binoculars as thousands of shriekers poured into the city streets. They followed the pheromone trails that led them deeper and deeper into the urban center. "Target density approaching optimal," Mireille said, checking her readings. 15,000 contacts in the kill zone. 20,000. 25. "The aliens are watching from orbit," Hyejin said. "They think we ran away. They think they won. Let them think that for another minute." Jiwan smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. 3 years ago, the Velkari had destroyed Colony 6. Her home, her family, everyone she loved. She had been off-world, working security on a cargo ship. She came back to find nothing but ashes. 30,000 contacts, Mireille reported. All major sectors reporting green. "We will never get a better concentration." Hyejin looked at Jiwan. "Would you like to do the honors, Sergeant?" Jiwan took the detonator. "This is for Colony 6, she said quietly. Then she pressed the button. New Sol exploded. Not all at once, but in a carefully choreographed sequence. Fuel air bombs hidden in the buildings went off first, consuming oxygen and creating massive pressure waves. Then shaped charges collapsed structures along predetermined lines, creating avalanches of concrete and steel. Directed energy weapons activated, sweeping the streets with concentrated beams. Chemical fires erupted, spreading faster than the shriekers could run. The entire city became a death trap. An industrial-scale execution. 30,000 shriekers died in less than 10 minutes. The ground shook. The sky turned orange with flame. The sound was like the end of the world. When the explosions finally stopped, New Sol was gone. In its place was a burning crater. And in that crater, 30,000 dead shriekers. Ji-won lowered the detonator. "That is for Colony 6, she repeated. Then she walked away without looking back. On the flagship, the Velkari bridge crew stared at their screens in absolute silence. They had watched the entire thing. They had seen the humans sacrifice one of their own cities just to kill the shriekers. The casual brutality of it was beyond anything they could comprehend. They destroyed their own city, Thessera whispered. They weaponized an entire urban center. What kind of species does that? One that refuses to lose, Kvaris said quietly. Vraxis stood frozen. For the first time in his military career, he felt something close to fear. The humans had not retreated in panic. They had retreated as bait. The entire withdrawal was a trap, and he had sent 30,000 shriekers straight into it. "Recall all shriekers," he said suddenly.
"Pull them back now, sir,"
an officer asked, confused. Pull them back. Get them off that planet before the humans kill them all. But it was too late. The human forces, emboldened by their victory, launched coordinated strikes across the planet. They hit shrieker concentrations with precision weapons. They used the same tactics that had worked in New Sol, luring creatures into traps and annihilating them. In 3 days, the humans killed another 20,000 shriekers. The survivors scattered into the wilderness, their pack cohesion broken, their terror tactics useless. Private Taeyang walked through the ashes of New Sol a week later. The medical crisis had passed. Fewer wounded were coming in now. The battle was turning. But the cost was everywhere. The city where he had trained was gone, erased from the map. The price of victory. He found Sergeant Ji-won sitting on a piece of rubble, smoking a cigarette. She looked older than her 35 years. "The war had aged them all. We destroyed a city to kill them," Taeyang said. "We are as brutal as they are." Ji-won blew out smoke. "No, we are more brutal. That is why we are winning. Is that something to be proud of?" Ji-won looked at him with tired eyes. "Pride has nothing to do with it, kid. This is survival. The Velkari brought their demons to our door. We showed them ours. If that makes us brutal, so be it. At least we are alive." Colonel Doyen stood in the command center receiving reports from across the planet. The shriekers were broken. The Velkari were pulling back. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to hope. Captain Heagin entered carrying a datapad. She looked grim. "Sir, we have intelligence that the Velkari are recalling all shriekers to their bioships. They are retreating? It appears so. They are preparing to leave orbit." Doyen should have felt relieved. Instead, he felt angry. "No, we are not letting them leave. They brought this war to us. They killed our people. They do not get to just fly away when it goes badly for them. What are you suggesting, sir?" Doyen looked up at the ceiling, as if he could see through it to the Velkari ships in orbit. His eyes were cold. "If they brought demons to our world, we are bringing hell to theirs. Prepare boarding teams. We are taking the fight to them." The stealth shuttles moved through the darkness of space like ghosts. No lights, no radio signals, just cold metal and human determination. Colonel Doyen sat in the lead shuttle, checking his weapon for the 5th time. Around him, 30 Marines prepared for combat, silent, focused, deadly. Lieutenant Mirai sat across from him, studying a holographic map of the Velkari flagship. She had memorized every corridor, every critical system. When they boarded, there would be no time for hesitation. 2 minutes to contact, the pilot whispered through their helmets. Sergeant Ji-won loaded her heavy rifle and grinned. Her face was painted with black camouflage. Her eyes gleamed with anticipation. "About time we took the fight to them," she muttered. "I am tired of playing defense." Private Taeyang checked his medical supplies one last time. His hands were steady. 3 weeks of constant combat had burned away his hesitation. He was no longer the scared young medic who had started this war. He was a soldier now, hardened, ready. 30 seconds, the Velkari flagship loomed before them. A massive bioorganic structure that looked more like a living creature than a ship. Its hull pulsed with sickly green light. Somewhere inside that ship was High Commander Vraxis, the alien who had ordered the Shrieker deployment. The one responsible for thousands of human deaths. Impact in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The shuttle struck the hull. Magnetic clamps engaged. Breaching charges detonated with muffled booms. The hull tore open. exposing organic corridors within. Atmosphere rushed out into space, but the humans were already inside, moving fast. The interior of the bioship was like a nightmare. The walls were not metal, but some kind of living tissue. They pulsed like a heartbeat. Bioluminescent veins ran through the ceiling, casting everything in an eerie blue glow. The air was thick and humid, smelling of chemicals and decay. "This place is disgusting," Jiwan said, her voice distorted through her helmet comm. "Stay focused," Doyen ordered. "Alpha Team, secure this section. Bravo Team with me. We are heading for the command center." They moved through the corridors like predators. The Velkari defenders were unprepared for an assault inside their own ship. The first group of aliens they encountered died before they could even sound an alarm. Human weapons were loud in the confined spaces. Effective. Lethal. Then the Shriekers came. The Velkari had kept some aboard the ship as security. They burst from side passages, shrieking their terrible cry, their multiple limbs scrabbling for purchase in zero gravity. But the humans had trained for this. They moved as one unit, covering each other, using the corridors to deny the creatures their mobility advantage. Jiwan fired in controlled bursts, each shot finding a weak point. Taeyang used a blade to finish a wounded Shrieker that got too close. Doyen directed fire with cold efficiency. Within minutes, 6 Shriekers lay dead. The humans moved on without pause. Lieutenant Mirai split off from the main group with a small team. She had a different objective. While Doyen went for the command center, she was heading for the biocore, the heart of the ship. According to their intelligence, that is where the ship's nervous system was located. The biocore chamber was massive, a spherical room filled with pulsing organic structures, nerve clusters the size of cars connected to control nodes through thick cables of living tissue. And at the center, a massive brain-like structure. The ship itself. Mirai approached it carefully, scanning with her instruments. "This is incredible," she whispered. "The ship is semi-sentient. It is alive. Truly alive." She connected her portable computer to one of the control nodes. Data flooded her screen. The ship's memories, its pain. She realized something horrifying. The ship did not want to carry the Shriekers. It was suffering from them like a body hosting a disease. The Velkari had forced it to become a weapon. "Sir?" She radioed to Doyen. "The ship itself is a prisoner. The Velkari enslaved it. We can take control. Override their commands, turn their own ship against them." "Do it," Doyen replied. Meanwhile, Doyen's team reached the command center. The door was sealed, but Jiwan attached breaching charges. The explosion tore through the organic material and the humans rushed in. High Commander Vraxis stood at the center of the room, surrounded by his bridge crew. He was tall for a Velkari, his exoskeleton decorated with military honors. His multiple eyes focused on Doyen with hatred and disbelief. "You should be broken," Vraxis shrieked. "The Shriekers have destroyed species far older and stronger than yours. You should be weeping in terror." Doyen raised his rifle. "That is your mistake. You sent predators after predators. Humans did not climb to the top of our food chain by being afraid. We got there by being better hunters than anything else on our world." "Impossible." "Is it? We hunted mammoths with stone spears. We crossed ice ages. We survived plagues and wars and disasters. We learned to kill everything that threatened us. Your Shriekers are just one more thing on that list." The Velkari guards moved to defend their commander. It was a brief firefight. The humans had better tactics, better weapons, and 3 weeks of practice killing things designed to be unkillable. The guards fell quickly. Jiwan walked up to Vraxis and pressed her rifle against his chest. "Your monsters are pathetic compared to some of the things we have dealt with back home. Bears, tigers, crocodiles, sharks. We have been fighting nightmares since we lived in caves. Your Shriekers are just target practice." Vraxis slumped in defeat. For the first time in his long military career, he understood fear. Real fear. Not the manufactured terror of the Shriekers, but the primal understanding that he was prey facing a superior predator. "Surrender," Doyen commanded. "Order all your forces to stand down now." Vraxis hesitated only a moment. Then he gave the order. Across the ship, Velkari forces laid down their weapons. The battle was over. In another part of the ship, bioarchitect Thesara worked frantically at her console. She had accessed human data files during the chaos. What she found terrified her. Earth's biological history, megafauna extinctions, predator-prey dynamics, evolutionary psychology, human mythology full of monsters, dragons, demons. She finally understood. The Shriekers were designed based on Velkari fear responses, but the Velkari had evolved on a peaceful world with few predators. They had no context for true terror. Humans, on the other hand, came from a world that had tried to kill them at every turn. Every culture had stories of heroes fighting monsters. Every mythology was full of creature slaying. It was embedded in their psychology. Fighting nightmares was not something humans feared. It was something they excelled at. We did not bring them nightmares, Thessera whispered to herself. We brought them target practice. We armed them, trained them, made them better at what they already do best. Captain Heejin arrived on the flagship hours later with reinforcements. She found Doyen in the captured command center, interrogating Vraxis. The alien commander had given up the locations of other Velkari facilities, fleet positions, colony worlds. Good work, Colonel, Heejin said. She looked at the data flowing across the screens. Intelligence, strategic information, everything they needed to end this war permanently. We have a choice, she said to Doyen. We can stop here, accept their surrender, or we can make sure they never try this again with anyone, ever. Doyen looked at Vraxis. He thought about the dead, about the cities destroyed, about Private Taeyang treating wounded soldiers for weeks without rest, about Sergeant Jiwon's murdered family on Colony 6. Send a message to command, he said quietly. Tell them we are going on the offensive. If the Velkari want to wage war with biological weapons, they are about to learn what real biological warfare looks like. We are taking this fight to every Velkari world until they beg for peace. Heejin smiled. It was a cold smile. The smile of someone who had lost everything and wanted revenge. Transmitting now, sir. Let us show them what happens when you bring demons to humanity's door. The laboratory deep inside the captured bioship hummed with activity. Lieutenant Mirai worked alongside human scientists and one Velkari. Bioarchitect Thessera had defected 3 days ago, bringing with her genetic codes and biological secrets that changed everything. The Shrieker pheromones can be modified, Thessera explained, her translator device making her voice sound mechanical. The same chemicals that make them hunt together can be altered to target Velkari biology instead. Your scientists are frighteningly quick learners. Mirai adjusted the genetic sequencer. We have had a lot of practice adapting. That is what humans do best. We take what we learn and we make it better. Or in this case, make it worse for our enemies. You realize what you are creating? Thessera asked. These modified Shriekers will be as terrifying to my people as they were supposed to be to yours. Perhaps more so. We have never known predation. We have no defenses against it. You should have thought of that before you designed them to terrorize civilians, Mirai said coldly. Now you get to see how it feels. The Earth Defense Force fleet hung in space above Velkari Colony 12. 5 captured bioships led the formation. Inside them, modified Shriekers waited in stasis pods. Behind them came human warships bristling with weapons. It was an invasion force, a message written in steel and violence. Colonel Doyen stood on the bridge of the lead bioship. It still felt strange to command an alien vessel, but Lieutenant Mirai had interfaced the controls with human systems. The ship responded to his commands now. It was grateful in its strange way to be free of Velkari control. The colony has minimal defenses, Captain Heejin reported from her station. They never expected us to attack them here. They thought we would stay on the defensive. They thought wrong, Doyen said. Deploy the modified Shriekers. Limited release. 10 specimens. Let the Velkari see what terror really means. The cargo bay opened. 10 dark shapes dropped toward the colony world below. These Shriekers were different from the originals. They had been reprogrammed at a genetic level. Their pheromones now triggered Velkari fear responses. Their hunting instincts targeted Velkari biological signatures. They were weapons turned against their creators. Within hours, reports came back. The Velkari colonists were panicking. Mass evacuations, communications chaos. The 10 Shriekers had done more damage to Velkari morale than a full military assault could have achieved. The psychological impact was devastating, but Doyen did not unleash thousands. He kept it limited, controlled. This was not about genocide. This was about sending a message. The message was simple. Humanity could do to the Velkari what they had tried to do to humanity. And humanity could do it better. Captain Heejin activated the broadcast system. Her message went out on all Velkari frequencies. Impossible to ignore or block. People of the Velkari Collective, you sent monsters to our worlds. You tried to break us with terror and death. Now you know how it feels. But understand this. We did not start this war. We do not want to continue it. Surrender your weapons, end your aggression, and we will stop. Refuse, and we will bring this to every Valkyrie world until your species understands the price of attacking humanity. The message repeated on endless loop. Across Valkyrie space, citizens heard it and felt true fear for the first time in their history. The humans were not just winning. They were reversing the horror, making the nightmare work both ways. On the Valkyrie homeworld, the ruling council met in emergency session. Reports flooded in from across their territory. Human forces were everywhere, not conquering, not occupying, just demonstrating that they could. Showing that nowhere was safe, Scout Commander Cavalrus stood before the council. He was the only one who had predicted this outcome, the only one who had warned them about underestimating humanity. We must negotiate, he said firmly. We cannot win this war. The humans have proven they are willing to do whatever it takes to survive, and they are better at it than we ever imagined. Negotiate with primitives? One council member scoffed. They are not primitives, Cavalrus said quietly. They are the deadliest species we have ever encountered. They come from a world that tried to kill them at every turn. They evolved to be survivors, fighters, hunters. We chose the worst possible enemy to provoke. After heated debate, the council sent Cavalrus to negotiate. He traveled to a neutral space station where Colonel Doyen and Captain Heejin waited. The meeting room was small and sparse, just a table and chairs. No weapons allowed. Cavalrus looked at the two humans. They looked tired, war-weary but unbroken. In Doyen's eyes, he saw something that made him deeply uneasy. Not hatred, not anger, just cold calculation. The look of a predator deciding whether to kill or spare its prey. You want to talk peace? Doyen asked. Yes, we underestimated your species. That was a grave mistake. We are prepared to offer reparations. To cease all hostilities. To destroy the remaining Shriekers. Why should we trust you? Heejin asked. Because we have no choice, Cavalrus said honestly. You have proven you can take this war to every Valkyrie world. You have shown you can use our own weapons against us. You have demonstrated tactical superiority in every engagement. If we continue fighting, we lose. Simple as that. Doyen leaned back in his chair. He thought about all the lives lost, about New Soul reduced to ashes, about Private Taiyang treating endless casualties, about Sergeant Jiwan's murdered family. The Valkyrie had brought so much pain. Here are our terms, he said. Complete dismantling of the Shrieker program. Every breeding facility. Every research station. Under human supervision. Full reparations for all colonies damaged in the war. And a permanent peace treaty with severe penalties for violations. That is acceptable. One more thing, Heejin added. This war proved that humanity can and will defend itself against any threat. Make sure every species in the galaxy knows. We did not want this war, but we finished it. Let that be the lesson, Cavalrus nodded. He understood perfectly. The humans were not just ending this war. They were establishing their reputation. They were making sure no other species would make the same mistake the Valkyrie had. Back on Arcturus Prime, Private Taiyang walked through the rebuilding city. Construction crews worked around the clock. Life was returning to normal. Or as normal as it could be after a war. He found Sergeant Jiwan at a memorial wall. Thousands of names carved in stone. All the people who had died in the war. She stood in front of one section for a long time. Her family. Her friends. Everyone from Colony 6. Do you think we became the monsters? Taeyang asked quietly. Jiwan was silent for a moment. We became whatever we needed to be to survive. That is what humans do. We adapt, we overcome. Sometimes that means doing terrible things. But we did not start this war. We just finished it. The Valkyrie think we are demons now. Good, let them think that. Let every species in the galaxy think that. Maybe then they will leave us alone. She touched one of the names on the wall. These people died because aliens thought we were weak. Thought they could scare us. They learned different. Everyone learned different. Lieutenant Murray and bioarchitect Thesara worked together in the labs dismantling the Shrieker genetics. Destroying the research, making sure no one could ever recreate these weapons. It was strange, working alongside the alien who had created them. But Thesara was genuinely remorseful. She was trying to undo the damage. Your species is remarkable, Thesara said. Terrifying but remarkable. You took the worst we could create and turned it into nothing, into target practice, evolution. Mireille said simply. We come from a world that killed everything that could not adapt fast enough. We learned or we died, so we learned very well. I hope other species learn from this war, Thessera said. Learn that humanity is not to be trifled with. So do I. Because if they do not, we will teach them the same lesson we taught you, and we are very good teachers. In space above, the peace treaty was signed. The war was over. Humanity had won. Not through superior technology, not through overwhelming numbers, but through adaptability, through determination, through the simple fact that humans refuse to break. They bend, they learn, they overcome, and anyone who forgets that does so at their own peril.